of the City of Canning. It's an absolute pleasure to be here chairing the October Ordinary Council meeting for the City of Canning. It is now 6 p.m. I'd like to start the proceedings by declaring the meeting open. We start, of course, by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land. We also pay our respects to elders, both past and present. Can I ask everyone present here this evening, councillors particularly please, to make sure mobile phones are turned off and put away for the duration of the meeting. This meeting is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. Council meetings are public meetings and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be publicly accessible. And the council chambers are not a parliament and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are found to be defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the City of Canning unless it is formally adopted by a resolution of this council. Elected members and employees must disclose any financial, proximity or partiality interest they have in an item on the agenda and declare the interest at the commencement of the meeting or at the very latest when the item is about to be discussed. Financial proximity and impartiality interests are to be disclosed in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act. Elected members disclosing a financial or proximity interest must not participate in that part of a briefing relating to their interest and must leave the meeting for the duration of the item. The confirmed minutes of the council meeting are the official record of that meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the City publishes a full recording of the meeting. And recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the City's express permission. If anybody missed part of that, I can read it all again if you like. No, all good. Thank you. I saw Sean away, shaking her head. Attendance, thanks very much, everyone. We have the full council in attendance tonight. I'm very pleased to see Councillor Parkinson back for the OCM. I hope you enjoyed your short break from council. Welcome back. Approved leave of absence at item 2.2. There are none. Disclosures of interest. CEO Michael Littleton, do we have any disclosures this evening?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to item 3.1, declarations of financial interest, I've received none. In relation to item 3.2, declarations of impartiality, I've received one declaration from Deputy Mayor Spencer Teo. In relation to item CC 020 of 24, the item details the lease renewal at Rossmoyne Community Hall, 6 3rd Avenue, Rossmoyne. The nature of her association is her son attends tutoring classes at that facility.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Spencer Teo for the declaration. Thank you, CEO. At item 4, announcement by the presiding member without discussion. I've deferred that right on to Councillor Kunza. I'd like him to say a few words. I've spoken to him about it. We had a funeral this week of a notable member of our community, and I think it is worth putting on the public record. Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Thank you for your invitation. I'd be honoured to say some words to commemorate and celebrate the life of Robert Duncan Suan, JP. Look, I appreciate that some of you here may not have met Robert, so thanks for the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of Council as we pay respect to one of Canning's pioneers. Our pioneers, as I've said in the past, helped build the City of Canning to what it is today. Robert and his wife, Madeline, have lived on Central Road in Rossmoyne for over 50 years, and have both contributed immensely towards their local community. Robert was born in Cronulla in 1931 and has lived in many parts of Australia, including his beloved Kojonup. But it was the City of Canning where Robert and his wife Madeline decided to set their roots and raise their children. Robert was passionate about helping his community and volunteered for many causes that he cared about. He was extremely proud to have served as a Justice of the Peace for almost 60 years. He was member 3852, a number he always signed off with. Having been a Cub Scout since the age of 8, he served the Scouting movement for most of his life, including 16 years as the group leader of the Rossmoyne Shelley Scout Group, and years as the Assistant District Commissioner of Beeloo District, which encompasses the City of Canning. He was awarded the Silver Koala in 2003, one of the Scouting movement's highest adult awards for his service to the youth movement. Robert, for those who knew him, was a visionary. He always wanted to look at the big picture or outside the box, which is something I admired personally. In the 1970s, Robert toured parts of Eastern Europe looking at waste management techniques, which was quite special for him, given that his background had been working in oil refineries, on railways, on shipping lines, and in tractor dealerships. He had such an interest in engineering environmental outcomes that he took his learnings to the state government and secured a $1 million grant from the then Minister of State Development, Sir Charles Court, to build a brand new composting facility here in the city of Canning, many decades before local governments pursued the SMRC concept. Unfortunately, I understand the then Health Minister didn't support the project and pulled the rug from underneath his feet, but it was evidence of how Robert was often ahead of his time. Robert later became a valuer and used his skill set to help others fight injustices, including in the High Court. He regularly used his knowledge and skill set to influence policy, whether it be at a local, state or federal level, and the records of all three tiers of government can prove that. He was often in these chambers here telling us what he believed we should be doing and how we could make our community a better place to live. Locally, Robert was involved in the former Riverton Rossmoyne Shelley Residents Association, where he championed many local initiatives. Again, he thought a bit bigger than others. Having seen the evidence of the amount of erosion at Shelley Beach Park, he strongly argued for a reclamation project to increase the level of public open space for the Rossmoyne and Shelley communities. He lobbied council and other decision makers to take action to remove nutrients and pollutants from our drainage system to ensure it was safe to swim in the Canning River. And he often said his dream was to be able to immerse himself in the water at Shelley Beach Park to celebrate his 100th birthday, but sadly he never got there. The Deputy Mayor and I joined many people from our local community yesterday at Robert's funeral, including former Canning councillors Robert and Faye Morgan and members of the Rossmoyne Shelley Scout Group, including Clinton Smith, to pay our respect as we celebrated his life. It was a happy affair as Robert wanted people to celebrate what had been rather than feel sorry for his loss. Robert was a wonderful, friendly, genuine person, and retirement never stopped him from wanting to contribute, and I'd like to thank him for his contribution to the City of Canning community. He was a unique personality and will be sorely missed. And Amanda and I made mention yesterday to put in our diaries to go down to Shelley Beach Park on the 7th of January 2031 to immerse ourselves in the Canning River just as Robert would have wanted to. Rest in peace, Robert. 3852.
Thank you, Councillor Kunze. Thank you. We'll move on to reports of delegates at item 5. Does anyone wish to submit a delegate report? Thank you, councillors. None. Question time for the public at item 6. A response to previous questions taken on notice. There are none. Question time for the public. The time set aside is 15 minutes for recording purposes. If you're going to ask a question, please state your name, step up to the microphone, state your name and address, and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. I do have a question here. I think Mandy from Queen's Park would like to ask a question in relation to concerns about safety in Queen's Park. Mandy, you here? Yeah. Don't be nervous. Step forward. You're amongst friends. Just introduce yourself, please, to the council and ask your question.
Hi, I'm from Queen's Park. I've been living there since 2015. It's a beautiful suburb, but not now. It's so much is happening, which most of you might be aware and might not be aware. I have retired and I'm staying home. I see for myself with my own eyes, and many other residents has come forward and spoke to me what's happening around that area. When I went door knocking each house, tried to get as signature as many as I could, but some of them was crying and having tears and saying this is not on. There's some houses like 6-7 times have broken in. And the day when my daughter's car was broken, there was 11 cars breaking the same night. These young boys, which are too young underage, and there's one adult where they go on bikes in the daytime around the suburb area and look around in the daytime, and nighttime after midnight they go around breaking cars.
I'll just have to ask, Mandy, can I just ask, are you the lady that's actually put the petition tonight, or is that somebody else? We've got a petition before council, not you? You're involved in that? No?
Is this the 100 old people sign it?
Obviously not you, but that's
No,
okay.
okay,
I
yeah.
just need you to ask your question, so it's question
Sure.
time. Thank you for your short preamble.
Yeah.
But can I just ask, what's your question to council?
My counsel is what you guys gonna do about it? Because I don't see any changes there. And every time I take the car to repair, to do the screen, the premiums keeps going higher because Queen Park is very high demand.
I'll try to answer that question. Just for the sake of the record, can I ask just your name and your address? We need that for.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
My name is Shirley Scala. I live in Queen's Park,
Just your street.
street, Queen's Park, Cross Street, sorry.
Cross Street, Queen's
Yeah.
Park. That'll do just fine. Thank you very much. Let me try to answer the question. Just so you would already know, crime and crime prevention, whilst councils have a very small part to play, as does every member of the community, crime per se is a matter for the Western Australian Police. It's a state government responsibility. So the City of Canning does have a community safety force. Force is the wrong word. We have community safety officers and rangers. They have no statutory powers under the law to actually ask people for their name and address or demand that they move on, or any of the powers that police have. Just so you do know, we've had frequent conversations with our local member, Bill Johnson. They know of the issues along the whole southeast corridor. It's not just in Queen's Park, though I recognise that's why you're here today. And even just yesterday, myself and Councillor Hearn were privy to a conversation with Zanita Mascarenas, the federal member for the seat of Swan, which takes in Queen's Park, to talk about opportunities for further funding for things that we know people like you need, and that's things around security for your own home, CCTV, security screens, more police, funding for all of those things that we know exist. So the City of Canning is playing its role. We're working really hard to educate people. We've increased our security incentive scheme fourfold from $20,000 per annum to $100,000 per annum. But we need more police on the street. We need more patrols in areas that we know there are issues. But that is a matter that I'd encourage you to write to your state member for and encourage them to take some affirmative action.
They say their hands are tied.
Their hands, they may say that, but
Yes, they
it's a
do.
matter of funding, isn't it? So we do have police that is their role. Police are about law enforcement. That's their role, not the role of local government.
I do go to the police station. You know what they say? Sorry, it's out of our hand.
I can appreciate that. I was a police officer for nearly 25 years, so I know things have markedly changed. Crime has increased. It's our number one concern across our city. Every time we survey residents, they tell us that is their key concern. And everyone here on this council understands that more needs to be done. Councillor Hardeep Singh, who was one of your ward councillors for Queen's Park, has been very vocal around CCTV and increasing our own funding here. But councils can only do so much. We have no authority to act on the matters that you're talking about. Matters about cars being broken into, suspicious people walking the streets at night and breaking into homes. Those are matters that can only be dealt with by the Western Australian Police and the state government. That is their role. So I encourage you to keep talking to them.
Yeah, but I've been there. I tell you what, my face is so popular.
I appreciate that. But you've
Nothing
asked
is
the question, and that's the only answer I can provide to you. It's not a function.
We tried to go to the MP. He said, you should go to the other person. It's like a football. You go to the right, they say go to the left. The left, they say go to the
Well, I guess the
centre.
good thing is that you've come to the council tonight, and the mayor himself is telling you that we're doing the best that we can, but it is a state government function. Local councillors, and particularly our rangers, have no authority under the Criminal Code of Western Australia to take any affirmative action around crime. It is a state government responsibility. So I urge you not to allow them to turn you away, to actually keep talking to them about the issue. And those are matters that can be brought before your local member of parliament. We don't have any authority to act on matters of crime. But having said that, I believe that we are doing all that we can here at the City of Canning to assist our community with the small amount of authority that we actually have.
What about the lights on the street? They're very dim. You can't walk after 6. It's so dark, and the bushes, it's not safe
Yep.
anymore.
We are actually doing everything that we can in relation to lighting. There have been programs about upgrading some of that lighting to LED from the current globes that are actually in those. But that's a very big project that will take many years. We can do that on direct. Absolutely, I think that's a great idea. So I've got a member of staff here that will actually contact you directly as soon as you step away from the microphone. We'll get your details from you and I'll make sure, Director Bo, thank you for that advice. We'll get somebody to come out and actually see where you live, look at those lights and see what can be done about those. You're right, that's something that perhaps we can influence.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure, and thank you for coming down. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to, there's no further questions from the floor? None? Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7 on tonight's agenda, which is confirmation of the minutes, and that's for the ordinary council meeting held back on the 17th of September 2024. The recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 2. Can I have a mover, please, for the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Secon. A seconder? Seconder, Councillor Rodriguez, thank you. We'll put that item to the vote.
The motion to confirm minutes for ordinary council meeting held on 17th of September 2024 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We move on to item 8, which is the receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1 this evening, we do have a petition. It's PET 002 of 24. The petition title is Residents of Queen's Park concerned about ongoing criminal activity, street lighting and CCTV cameras. I believe the lady that was just here is actually the petitioner. The recommendation appears on page 3 of the agenda. It's also on screen, and the recommendation is that council receives the petition for the Chief Executive Officer to action. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please, for that item? Councillor Hardeep Singh. Thank you. I don't propose to speak on it other than to say that we've spoken on the item at length and that the matter will be sent through to the Chief Executive Officer, and I look forward to that report coming back to Council. Council? Just be action. Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Let's put the item to the vote. Thank you.
The motion for item PET 00224 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. At item 8.2, presentations, there are none. At item 8.3, deputations, similarly there are none. Applications for leave of absence, at item none, there are none. Questions by members which due notice has been given without discussion, there are none. Items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery, at item 11 there are none. And at item 12, reports of committee meetings, similarly there are none. We move on to item 13, which are reports. The first report is from the Office of the CEO, Michael Littleton. It's OC 009 of 24. It's the WALGA Local Government Elections Analysis 2015-2023 Advocacy Position. The officer's recommendation appears on screen. It's an alternate recommendation. The recommendation is also on page 6 of the agenda. I will move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please, for the item? Thank you, councillors, for Deputy Mayor Spencer Teo. Councillors, in relation to this item here, just to be clear, I actually sit on the State Council, the WALGA State Council's Policy and Governance Committee, and I'm the chair of that committee. And the reason why this has gone to every local government in the state is because I asked for that to occur. We needed some. This is only an advocacy position. This is not about setting policy. It's just so when WALGA in the next 5 years talks to government about where we should go in the future in relation to the carriage and the conduct of elections, that they have an advocacy position from which they can speak to government about. And government is already a long way through the local government reforms, and none of these changes at the moment are really on the agenda. But I did want to speak in relation to some of these items, particularly in relation to compulsory voting. Again, it's only an advocacy item, but it's a peculiar thing to me that every year, every 2 years, this council and all other councils in Western Australia, 140 of them, we print out here in the City of Canning tens of thousands of ballot papers at extraordinary cost to this community, and then we only have between 27 and 30% of them actually come back in the election. And that means, about 70%, far higher in some councils, lower in some, but far higher in some. 70% of those ballot papers at great cost to the community basically go into landfill, and in some occasions there has been some manipulation. I think we must move towards compulsory voting. I know that might be unpalatable to some, but for those who might think that we should try to keep politics out of local government, that ship has sailed a long time ago, and we are one of the only states in Western Australia. The only other state is South Australia that does not already have compulsory voting. And we saw in the last election, the state government has now imposed on us optional preferential voting. And I am really worried that unless we actually have compulsory voting with OPV now, there may be some claims that optional preferential voting can be somewhat manipulated if the sample of voters is relatively small, and I would hate to see that happen. So I just think it's inevitable. I would like for WALGA to start advocating in the future moving towards compulsory voting in the local government elections, because frankly we have to be consistent with the voting methods used in every other local government except for South Australia across the whole of Australia. And I think I've also seen in the last few years in my role on State Council, but also as a mayor here, and I'm sure all of you have seen it as well, that the role of local government is being somewhat diminished. And I think if we want to retain the standing of local government as a legitimate level of government, a tier of government, then we have to actually do what every other tier of government has done, and we have to be consistent with federal government, state government, and also with local government. If we want people to be more engaged in local government, if we want our residents to be more engaged with us and more engaged with candidates and more engaged with the election process, the only way for that to occur is to ask them to actually come forward and vote. And it's not I don't think it's too much to ask. That's the freedom that comes with democracy, is that we ask people every 2 years to come out for 5 minutes and cast a vote, and that's not too much, I wouldn't think, to ask. So I'm hoping that tonight, amongst the other recommendations here, that we support compulsory voting. Deputy Mayor, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with pretty much everything that you said. I think the last year's election certainly taught us a lot. This optional preferential voting was incredibly labour intensive. The cost was astronomical, and the time that it actually took to count the votes and recount the votes and actually come forward with the decision was just unnecessary. So if there ever is a time where the state government may listen to the ramifications of their decision, I think it would be good to have this document, this advocacy position, sitting there and waiting for them. I don't believe that this is something that they're probably going to entertain this early on, but certainly if more of us start speaking up, then hopefully they will start listening. I also agree that we should be looking at compulsory voting. Although it is time-consuming and onerous, we live in a state and in a country where democracy should be appreciated, and I think asking people to be involved in that democratic process is not too much to ask. So I hope that councillors support this tonight and that someone listens to it somewhere down the track. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on the item before we put it to the vote? Councillor Hearn, thank you.
So I just want to state that I don't support each and every one of these positions. I also don't consider myself as a beneficiary of the existing voting system to be in a position to put forward an impartial position. But as there is no binding impact of the position adopted today by the City of Canning, WALGA or the state government, I won't be pursuing vigorous debate on this matter.
Thank you. And just to remind everyone, it's just an advocacy position. It doesn't affect us individually here right now at all. Councillor Kunza?
I tend to disagree with that. We're taking positions on matters that impact us as a local government, and it's just an advocacy position. To the contrary, we're basically stating that this is what we believe in and this is what we believe the state government should be doing. I wouldn't diminish its impact. I do diminish the fact that I don't personally believe it will go anywhere. As I stated last week, half these things have already been dealt with by the state government in recent time. And also, WALGA is so divided on many of these issues that it often fails to take a position. And then the question is whether the state government even listens to WALGA's position at the end of that process. But I would state again that this whole process has come from a point where people and local governments and councillors were concerned with the issues around the 2023 local government election, and the emphasis revolves around the lack of transparency, the costs of the election, the perceived decreasing level of service from the WA Electoral Commission. So I find it illogical to then start taking firm positions on matters, on new positions, so, as the Mayor said, compulsory voting, electronic voting, changes in the terms of office, with basically zero information on how it would work. Why would you ask the Western Australian Electoral Commission to implement electronic voting from a basis where you're upset with how they're conducting elections? Wouldn't you want confidence in the process before you are arguing for change? I know, as the Mayor said, some people, I think you said, I know people have made comments about postal voting being open to manipulation and so forth, potentially, and there's been a couple of high-profile cases, but the same would be the case for electronic voting. Last year, the New South Wales State Government had to put out a statement that their iVote system was was needing to be looked at because there were issues with its iVote electronic system. So, as I said, I don't think this process will go anywhere, but at the end of the day, we as a council are making defined position statements based on very little information, and we are lobbying WALGA that this is our position. And even though, and I agree with what Councillor Hearn said to a degree, but you have to still argue for what you believe in. And so I'm moving an amendment to change Part A to voluntary and to remove electronic from voting accessibility. And I'd appreciate a seconder.
I'll just wait until we get the amendment up. So Councillor Kunza has proposed an amendment. Part A. To voluntary. What was the second part of it, Councillor?
And to remove electronic from E.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please, for the amendment? Councillor Page. Thank you, Councillor Page. Councillor Kunza?
So I'll just briefly speak to, I spoke about the electronic voting, but in terms of voluntary voting, and I know the Mayor has in the past argued against compulsory voting with the same passion he just voted for, he argued for compulsory voting, because compulsory voting means that you bring party politics into play because the majority of people vote party lines. Now, I don't accept that party politics is here. All of us who are sitting here have been elected in our own rights. There are people that are members of political parties, myself included, but I don't stand there as a certain candidate, and none of us do. We argue to be elected as ourselves, our independent selves, and I think that's a fantastic thing. It's my responsibility to go down to enrol as a candidate. You'd see recently the New South Wales Liberal Party got into a lot of trouble because their candidates are picked through the party system. I'd hate for that to happen. They often say local government is the grassroots form of government, and you're literally getting independent candidates who some might have certain philosophical beliefs, but the reality is we all do. Sometimes people just define to a political party. But I don't necessarily believe that we should be moving towards similar styles of, similar to other states. I don't agree that we need a consistent form of elections across the country. I mean, some tiers of government have both preferential voting and proportional voting. Some tiers of government, some states have, in WA, we vote first past the post, preferential and proportional. Tasmania has the Hare-Clark voting system. There is no consistency across the Australian democratic system, and that's fine. We have a great democracy. I picked very conservative outcomes because I think that we shouldn't be pushing major change, and I think that we should be pushing voluntary voting because at the end of the day, we all go to immense efforts to try to get people to vote for us, and in my ward, 6 out of 10 decided not to. But to force them to vote, and often they don't have the information at hand, will take us down a party political system, and I don't think we should be pushing that, and I don't know why we would. So I hope you agree with me. Thank you.
Councillor Page.
Yes, I would agree that inviting sometimes the tumultuous relationships of those party systems into local government doesn't seem like the best idea. But mainly I'm also supporting this because of the voting accessibility. Like you said, one of the triggers was the increasing costs with the decreasing level of service. And there's been no information about how much this would cost. The WAEC has never delivered an electronic voting. We don't know, there's obviously issues that come up around integrity and then having to defend the integrity of electronic voting. I don't want to be part of that we've then decided to do electronic without any sort of idea of what the cost will be to the residents of our community. So I'm supporting Ben Cous's amendment.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I just have a question. Sorry, Mr. Yildiz, to put you on the spot, but I recall last week you saying that a substantial body of work's already been done looking into electronic voting. Could you perhaps maybe share with us what you know?
Mr. Yildiz.
Thank you, and through the Mayor. My understanding, the department has started to investigate significantly the processes that they would expect and the engagement with WAEC to look into systems that provide the level of security that would be required for electronic voting. The extent and how far that's gone down on the technological advancements, I'm not at liberty, I'm not aware of that, but I do know there's been significant investigations into the systems that may be able to do that.
And just to follow up, would you say that electronic voting would be cheaper or more expensive than postal voting?
Through Mayor Hall, I most probably haven't seen any of the numbers. It'd be pretty difficult to be able to estimate that without actually knowing what the costs are to set up the system and then be able to license it.
Thank you. Look, I'll just say a very few quick words. I'd speak against the amendment, so I'm not in favour of it, so I speak against it. I just don't think the fact that we introduce compulsory voting necessarily means that suddenly every voter would default to a party political position. I just think that's a real leap. I don't think that. I think people are cleverer than that. I think we need to be not. Western Australia is known to be wait a while, isn't it? We always seem to be behind the rest of Australia. The rest of Australia has compulsory voting in local government, and for good reason. And I don't think any of those reasons would be around trying to make it party political. I think it's because that's what a democracy is. And at the moment, I think all of us here would know that somehow we have to find a different way to hold local government elections that encourage more than 30% of people to actually vote. And I'm sick of people telling me personally or putting in the press that people like myself were elected with a tiny percentage of people. And I remember after the last election when I got 20% of the vote and became the mayor, that people were saying, oh, you got 20% of the vote, but only 30% of people voted. So how can you have a mandate as a councillor and feel that you were actually elected by a community when so few people actually vote? And I also would make the point, I went to holding a big event very soon for a charity that deals with people with and supports people with disability. And you know what? I'd make the point that to be inclusive means that you bring everybody along with it. And I just wonder how many people that are actually, significantly aged and infirm or actually suffer from disability would find it far easier to engage in the democratic process if they could actually vote electronically from home rather than having to get in a car or find a lift down to a polling booth somewhere. And if every other state has been able to do it, I don't understand why Western Australia wouldn't at least advocate for it. And it seems like that's where the government is heading in any case. But you know what, we keep saying that we're a smart city. How can we be a smart city and then not even entertain the thought of using an electronic system if it becomes available? And I have great faith that if it ever became available, that the Electoral Commission would make sure that it is fit for purpose. How can we tell ourselves that we're a smart city and then vote tonight not to include any premise of future electronic voting? So again, this is simply an advocacy position taken by the Western Australian Local Government Association. It doesn't bind the City of Canning to any position. The recommendation is that the Western Australian Local Government Association adopts the following advocacy positions. We're simply being polled as to whether or not we would support exploring those options, and that's it. I just hope we don't overthink it here. I think we should at least support compulsory voting and not go back to the historic way that we have always done things. If we keep doing what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always been given, and that is really small output at local government and a big waste of public money. Thanks, all I've got to say. Deputy Mayor, and then I'll go to Councillor Singh.
Thanks, Mayor Hall. I also don't support the amendment, although I'm not really fussed about the method of voting, whether it's electronic or I just look at the, having been involved in 2 elections in such a short period of time, you see how many ballot papers are either flying in the wind, sitting in letterboxes, and that cost that was that's involved in distributing those just to have them sitting there with nobody participating in the process. Electronic is a lot more attractive to me purely because you don't have that wastage of paper. With respect to party politics, I know that political parties do promote their candidates amongst their membership. I wasn't a member of a political party for my first campaign, and I only became a member, I think it was after my second. And I believe I got elected based on my work in the community, not based on my party affiliations, even though the first time I didn't have any. But I do know that certainly the Labor Party and the Liberal Party do send out an email and publications to their members saying this is one of our candidates running in the local government elections, but that's obviously the candidate's choice whether or not they want to go on that list. And it's also that person's choice. Not everybody is a member of a political party. We've got probably a couple of hundred in our, my ward, you could say, and I don't think that would have made a difference whatsoever to certainly my election result. So I'm not convinced that party politics will be introduced if we were going to go down the compulsory, but I would certainly be confident that more people would be, having a decision on who represents them. There's nothing worse than going out in the community and people not knowing who their local representative is because they don't take an interest in local government until something local actually affects them. And I think it's really important that people have a say in who represents them at every single tier of government. And I think the only way to do that is through compulsory voting. But like I said before, whether or not this happens, but this is my personal choice, I think that everybody should have a say and we should bring them along for that journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, nice to hear from you. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I do not support the amendment. The reason behind that is, in a democracy, voting is the most important thing a resident can do for their government. And as a government, we should be doing everything possible to make sure that everyone votes. So having compulsory voting, I think it's absolutely important. Second part, I'm actually a little bit confused and surprised, given that Councillor Kunz was the main force behind getting the e-petitions implemented in about 2016, which I was very happy to read when it was done. So taking the electronic part out, where it could open up a lot of opportunities, we don't know. The cost, yes, it could be a concern, but it could be the other way around. It could bring every post we do, it costs about $1. The electronic thing can do it in 10 cents, maybe 5 cents. We don't know. It's just the unknown. So exploring that unknown is not a bad thing. Yes, if the cost is high, we can always decide, okay, we don't want to go that route, but closing that door of not even exploring it doesn't sound right to me. So I will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak before I invite Councillor Kunze to close debate? Councillor Bain, hello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the amendment tonight. I agree with both WALGA and the local government sector in their support for voluntary voting. I don't believe there's a strong demand for compulsory voting elections every 2 years in the community. Where it is in place, as we've seen over East, I see political parties heavily involved in elections, and I'd rather not see that here at a local government level. As for electronic voting, it's currently not an option, and I don't have all the information in front of me to make a informed decision on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll ask Councillor Kunze, would you like to close debate, please?
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, I'll just say a few things. I think I know Councillor Singh did, and I think Mayor Hall did make comments about exploring these things. This is us taking a statement of belief. This isn't us asking for the state government to explore electronic. It's saying we want it. We want compulsory voting. We want electronic voting. It's not asking to explore. It's saying we want it. I don't have the information to say I want it. I put a motion to introduce e-petitions, but I think the integrity of an e-petition and the integrity of someone's vote are completely different things. When there's allegations of improper behaviour currently, as there was in one of the Hill local governments, they went through and looked through the evidence. Across the world, when there's issues of with electronic voting, very hard because it's anonymous. You don't want, it's a very difficult area to manage, but I won't go too far into that. I will make the point with terms of compulsory voting and voluntary voting following the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor. People have a freedom of choice. They have the right to say whether they want to participate or not, and 60% of people choose not to. We live in a democracy. I don't think making someone vote for a local candidate will actually make them know their local councillor. In fact, it's amazing how often people struggle to know who you are, even though they then realise they voted for you. It's just a point in time. I don't necessarily believe that it diminishes your mandate, Mayor Hall, or diminishes your standing. The reality is that every single elector within the City of Canning had a right to vote, and the proportion of people that did vote, the majority of them voted for you. So you should be proud of that, and you've got a mandate. The people that chose not to vote, they chose to give up their democratic rights. So that's the issue of whether they have the right to complain or not. But in terms of mandates and whether your position should be respected on the proportion of people that have voted, everyone had the right to do that or not, and the majority voted for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kunze, and thank you for your comment about my mandate. I feel much better about it after that. Thank you. Councillors, let's put this to the vote. We're only voting on the amendment, so not on the resolution proper, but just on the amendment.
The amendment, excuse me, the amendment to the motion for item OC 00924 has been lost with 5 in favour, and that's why it's not picking up, and 6 against. It's not pulling up.
So just click view there. Yeah, click on.
Oh, there we go. And 6 against. Those against were councillors Singh, Tuchek, Parkinson, Secon, and Deputy Mayor Spencer-Teo and Mayor Patrick Hall, voting against the motion, the amendment.
Thank you, Governance. We then move back to the substantive motion. I move the motion. I've spoken to it. The Deputy Mayor and others have spoken on it. Unless anyone wishes to speak again, I shall just put it to the vote, I think, and we shall move on. Thank you, councillors. I don't wish to close. We shall put the substantive motion to the vote. Thank you. Just one more, councillors.
The substantive motion has, for items OC 00924, has been carried with 8 in favour and 3 against. Councillors Kuntz, Councillor Page and Councillor Hearn voting against the motion.
Thank you. We move on to OC 010 of 24. Council meeting dates for 2025. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 14 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Page. Thank you, Councillor Page. A seconder? Councillor Hearn. Thank you. Councillor Page.
I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Hearn.
Happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone want to propose an amendment, or are you happy with the way it is? Councillor Secon.
Mayor Hall, I'm just wondering if we can move the OCM on the 15th of April, which falls within the school holidays, to the week after. It is the school holidays.
I think it would still be, I think the CEO
2 weeks
just mentioned
later,
that it would
yes.
still be in the school holidays.
To the 29th of April.
I think that would mean we'd have to move everything across. You could propose an amendment to it, but that would be 2 weeks later than it is. It would be the last week of April, which means that we would have 13 or 14 days to prepare all the reports for the May meeting. It just is a bit tight for that. We've accommodated, I think, every other school holiday in there, but when do the school holidays run to?
I think in October we did make an amendment, which is part of the amendment in this document. So in October, the agenda briefing does fall during the school holidays. And as a mum of 3 young kids, I've already got prior commitments during the school holidays. I'll be missing that one, and I'm hoping I don't have to miss the one in April as well.
CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I appreciate that the 15th is within the school holidays. It's the first week and obviously the Tuesday of the first week of the school holidays. What we've tried to do is to minimise the disruption on school holidays in that April break. If we were to postpone the OCM until after the school holidays, there would be a 2-week gap between the AB and the OCM, which is difficult to facilitate. So we've we've tried to minimise the disruption as much as we can, but that's the rationale. Obviously, we've provided in the report a range of options for council to consider. All of those things are for you to consider tonight, but we've tried to manage the decision-making process of council as best we can.
Thank you. Councillor Singh first, and Deputy Mayor, you've got your mic on. Deputy Mayor.
I was just wanting to ask a question, what the possibility or impact would be is if we didn't have an AB in April and we had the OCM on the 8th, could we perhaps have a SIB prior to that rather than having an AB? We seem to be getting through our ABs really quickly now. Would you see an issue in that?
Are we required to hold an AB? Just microphones on, we've got too many mics on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, that certainly is a possibility. Obviously, sitting here in October, I can't articulate what will be considered by council at the April meeting. We'll obviously try and make sure that that we give council as much information as we can, but generally, we've been using the AB, the SIB process, the AB process, to make sure that that council have got as much information as they can. Again, all of those are available. Is an option, not an option we contemplated, but there's no statutory requirement to hold an AB.
And since you asked the question, and I agree, and it's worth exploring it, but it would also mean, of course, if we don't hold an AB, members of the public do lose the opportunity to come down here and ask questions and do deputations. And I know it doesn't happen always, but having that second council meeting in the month does provide an additional opportunity for us to engage with the community. So I take your point, but that would be the only negative I would see from not having an AB. Councillor Kunza? Oh, sorry, Councillor Singh first, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. I remember this council passed a motion not to hold any meetings during school holidays. Are we not contradicting that motion which is already passed by the council, or was that only
I think it was about
effective?
considering school holidays. I don't think it was carte blanche that we would never hold a meeting during school holidays, because of course we may be required at some point due to urgent business to hold a special council meeting. So I think it was that we would always consider, which we have. That was the motion, I believe. Councillor Kunza.
I was just going to clarify that there's been no changes to the October council meetings because no amendment's been proposed. It's still as the staff recommended after the school holidays and after the election.
Councillor Second, can you live with the missing that meeting in April, or do you believe that you'll have to miss the meeting? Other than that, you can propose an amendment, but the CEO's given an explanation as to why he believes it probably should leave it as it is.
I was just thinking, I was looking at the calendar for next year, and Tuesday, the 1st of April, just following on from what Deputy Mayor said, that could be the AB followed by the council meeting the week after, which is the 8th.
I never think it's a good idea to hold a council meeting on April Fool's Day.
You'll also have the same issue where it'll only be a couple of weeks after the March meeting as well.
It would be. So we would hold the March meeting, Councillor Second, on the 18th of March, and then be required to hold the April meeting on the 1st, which would be 12 days later. It doesn't give our officers a lot of time to prepare reports and for us to go through all the administration that's required in the lead up to these meetings. That's why we try to schedule them a month ahead. It just impacts on a whole bunch of stuff here. Councillor Page.
Just to clarify, obviously with our SIBs, when councillors have been out of town for various other business things, we've been able to attend electronically. Is that available for official council meetings as well as an option?
I think, Deputy CEO, is that option still available? Or is it, did we propose an all-in, all-out option? I thought that was the case.
Well, I'm just getting the nod that it's available. I think in exceptional circumstances it should be.
I don't have any issue with it in exceptional circumstances. So that provides an option. Councillor Second?
I might still move the amendment and see how that goes.
Okay, what's the amendment that you're proposing then?
To move the council meeting date to the 8th of April and the AB to the 1st of April.
Do I have a seconder, please, for the amendment? Councillor Singh has put the, is the seconder. Councillor Second, did you want to just explain the reasoning behind the amendment?
Yep. As a mum of 3 young school-age kids, we've already got prior commitments during the school holidays. And as an elected representative for my community, I rather be here during the meetings and rather not miss it for holidays that I have already pre-planned, given that I put the motion, Deputy Mayor Amanda and myself put the motion in last year to not have any meetings during the school holidays. So I've already pre-planned my holidays, and
You're going to be overseas during that period, is that what you're saying?
I will be overseas, and I do understand there are some other members here today that will be on holidays as well during that time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the amendment. The main reason I'm supporting the amendment is Councillor Seco cares so much about attending the meeting. She's planning so far ahead and trying her best to attend the meeting. So I believe it's a fair enough ask from CEO and the team to, I understand, work a little bit harder and make those documents available. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Deputy Mayor.
Although I completely sympathise, I don't know where I'm going to be next week, let alone next April, and I haven't booked anything. However, I'd like to foreshadow, or if you would consider putting the OCM on the 8th, and I think that's a happy compromise, is that we drop the AB and just have the OCM on the 8th. Would you consider that? Otherwise, I would foreshadow that amendment if this one was lost.
Yes, I would.
Yeah?
So we would need to, I think, at the moment, deal with the amendment. I don't think I can amend the amendment on the fly, or can I?
She's agreed to
Okay.
it.
All right. So that would be the OCM on the 8th.
Yep, and we don't have an AB in April.
CEO, I know that we've spoken about this a little previously. You don't see any significant consequences from doing so. Council can still be fully appraised before the meeting and provided all the information it needs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, our intention, obviously, it's council's ability to determine the OCM agenda format. We'll obviously do our very best to deliver that. Given the short period of time, I don't anticipate that will be a long meeting. We would have made decisions, enacted them. So, that's, I think the consequence is that it's probably likely to be a short meeting anyway.
Councillor Kunza.
Can I just ask a question, given that all this has been done on the fly? My understanding is the Act 54B, it just refers to the OCM, not the agenda briefing. So even if we have the agenda briefing in the motion, that can be decided later on. We're not contravening anything in deciding not to do the agenda briefing later down the track.
Only that, obviously it would be our intention to create a meeting schedule and advertise, and have those published. Just means that, if we would need to ensure that it's removed from our publication. I'd probably argue it's easier to include the AB at some point in time if it's necessary, as opposed to stipulate. But
Yes, Councillor Kunza.
Sorry, but under what you just said, we'd have a council resolution saying no agenda briefing.
CEO.
Yes, but, if we, that's a fair point. I recant. Fair point. Well, I think that's the conversation in front of us at the moment.
Just stand by. We're just amending the recommendation.
Yes, I'm happy to remove the no agenda briefing bit.
Done? Thank you. So the amendment is on screen. Councillor Sekon has moved a amendment that has been seconded by Councillor Singh. With the agreement from the mover, it was then subsequently changed somewhat. It now means an OCM will be held on the 8th, proposed that it will be held on the 8th, and no AB will be held for that month. We have an explanation on how that will work from the CEO. Councillor Sekon has spoken in support of her proposed amendment. Councillor Singh then also spoke in support of the amendment. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hearn?
Whilst I'm always willing to make myself available for my responsibilities on council at any time, it's important to me to support the integrity of decisions that have been made by council in the past, especially when it's probably just 1 year ago. So I will support this amendment.
I'm going to be that old stick in the mud. Sorry. Look, I just feel we've just had Councillor Parkinson absent for 3 meetings. I, on occasion, am forced to miss meetings. The world hasn't stopped turning and the sky hasn't fallen down. It is perfectly acceptable for a councillor, for family reasons or for any other reason, to miss a meeting. But the impact on changing all of this is going to have an impact on a lot of people that are going to have to work probably harder and change things around to accommodate one person being unavailable. And I don't say that as a criticism. I'm just saying that this is a really big change to accommodate you attending when there's no requirement for you to attend the meeting. You can miss the meeting, you can dial in later on, you can listen to it at some point, you can catch up, we can have briefings with the CEO and briefings with other members, and you don't have to actually be at the meeting on the night, and physically you don't have to be here. You can dial in if you'd like to. So I just think it's I'm just not sure about the precedent setting here. I understand the premise of changing dates as best we can and trying to accommodate everybody, particularly not just young women, but also young fathers who have family responsibilities. But I just think that changing this around because of an overseas trip is probably, for me, being an old stick in the mud, but supporting what you're saying, just a bridge too far. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I think we should leave it as it is. But thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we put the matter to the vote? Councillor Sekon, would you like to close on your amendment? Be kind to me.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I think everyone is entitled to their own opinions. I just feel that as an elected member, I want to be present at the meetings as that's one of my core responsibilities. And I also do understand in the lead up to the budget in June, there's lots of additional meetings and SIPs that happen around that time. And I do want to be available and not let my commitments, impact upon my availability to attend council meeting and all the other meetings associated with it. Thank you.
Good point about the budget. Thank you. Councillors, we'll put the item to the vote. Thank you.
The amendment to the motion for item OC 01024 has been carried with...
Thank you. Councillor Sekon's amendment has been carried 9-2. Thank you, Councillor Sekon, for that. We shall now put go to the substantive motion. The substantive motion was moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Hearn. Councillor Page, did you speak to it? I think you did just briefly. Didn't you say you supported it? Councillor Hearn, I think similarly you supported it at the time. If no one wishes to speak further on the matter, we shall put the item to the vote. Thank you, Councillor Page. Thank you, councillors.
The substantive motion, the amended substantive motion for item OC 01024 has been carried with 8 in favour and counts.
I think it's 10 in favour.
Sorry, 10 in favour. Thank
That's
you,
all
Mayor. 10 in favour and Councillor Tuchek voting against the amendment.
Thank you. We move on to item 13.2. The report comes from the Directorate of Ms Lorraine Driscoll, the Director of Corporate and Commercial. It's CC 020 of 24. The title of the report is Lease Renewal for the Ilankai Tamil Sangam Incorporated, Rossmoyne Community Hall, 6 3rd Avenue in Rossmoyne. Thank you to Deputy Mayor Spencer Teo, who has declared an earlier impartiality interest, and she will be remaining in the room for the vote and has declared that interest. The recommendation is on page 19 of tonight's agenda and is also on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Deputy Mayor Kunza, thank you. A seconder? A seconder? I'll second it from the chair. Thank you. Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, I won't speak too much to it, but I just want to move an amendment as per what I've provided earlier. Which would be to add at the end of the first part would be subject to the term of lease being 5 years. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Hearn has seconded the amendment. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kunza, would you like to speak to the amendment, please?
Yeah, look, staff's position as outlined in the report was a 5-year lease. That's consistent with what we would do. The tenant wanted a 10-year lease due to the desire to apply for grants. There is, however, nothing structurally proposed that would require a significant grant. So I'm unsure why we would provide a more lengthy tenure. I've seen many leases during my time, some of which precede my time on council, where the city's entered into more lengthy contracts without real reason at some times, and then subsequently regretted it. Whilst I note both parties have the ability to terminate the contract with 12 months' notice, I don't really see that as going to eventuate, especially from our end, given the public perception generated where the city is looking to cancel a community lease. I believe it's more practical to just provide a 5-year lease and the council in the future and the city to consider that situation at a future point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Hearn, have you got anything you'd like to add?
I just agree that a 5-year lease will meet the needs of this community group.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we put the amendment to the vote? Thank you. We'll just put the amendment to the vote, councillors. That will be to change the terms of the lease from 10 years to 5 years. Just waiting for one more. This time it wasn't me.
The amendment to the motion for item CC 02024 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Kunza, you moved the substantive motion. I seconded it. You have changed the term, which is now the substantive motion, which is 5 years, which is the only change. Did you wish to speak further on the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you. Nor do I. I don't wish to speak further on it. I wish the Ilankai Tamil Sangam Incorporated best wishes and thank them for their community service. Councillors will put the item to the vote.
The substantive motion as amended for item CC 02024 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. The next item is CC 022 of 24. The title of the report is Indara Corporation Proprietary Limited, 40 Centenary Avenue, proposal for new lease and land excision from Crown Reserve. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 27 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Happy to move it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A seconder? Councillor Kunza, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
I support the officer's recommendation. It really is just the final step for this thing. So I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Councillor Kunza?
Likewise, I support the officer's recommendation. It follows council's previous decision. I recognise there were differing views on the matter. However, this puts that into further progression, and I think council should support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the item before we put it to the vote? Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation. Simply knowing the concerns of nearby residents, I can't support entering into a lease with Indara for this portion of Centenary Park, not when there are other sites available on the other side of the park that are compatible for their wishes to install a telecommunication infrastructure. And these spots over the other side will also achieve the same coverage objectives and also earn the city a rental income. I'm not against a lease being issued for this purpose at Centenary Park. My preference, however, is for an alternative lease to be considered by the city and the applicant, one for a portion of the park not 48 metres away from people's homes, but 100 metres away on the western side. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I speak in favour of the motion. This council has supported this, not unanimously, but nevertheless the intent of it is that council wish for this matter to be progressed, and it has been progressed. I do take a councillor's view in relation to proximity to homes, but I would make the point that we have similar towers across the city of Canning, some in similar distance to childcare centres, and they have been approved and have been operating without any incident. There are enormous benefits to ensure that we have significant communications and consistent communications across the city, notwithstanding that those communications also carry emergency communications, which in times of need are important to communities just like Canning. So I've got no issue with it. I do take Councillor Bain's point though, and I applaud him for standing by his view on the matter, but I think council has made a decision on this item, and we are now at a point that we should complete the transactional side of it. So I support it. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Page, thank you.
Yes, I would also like to not support the officer's recommendation. The impact into the local residents' amenity is definitely nothing to be scoffed at, and also the impact of the public use of Centenary Park, because that particular parcel of land chosen because of the cosp of trees to help disguise it is actually an area of premier shade right next to that car park, basketball court, cricket nets. It's actually an area of quite high utilisation for the residents and for the visitors and users of the park. And the residents are amenable to having a tower just on the other side of the park, and I think that that's completely reasonable, and leaving that area that is really highly trafficked for the public's use in a public open space I think is very fair.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we... Thank you, Councillor Hearn.
I think we have recently learned in Queen's Park Reserve that once we sign a lease to install telecommunications infrastructure, there is federal legislation that comes into effect that we cannot then obstruct upgrades on future technologies being implemented in the same leasehold, if that's my correct understanding of what happened recently. So in my view, the local objections to the installation of such infrastructure, whilst it may or may not currently be misguided based on current technologies, it then does put us in a position where our hands can be a little bit tied about the adoption and installation of future technologies at the same site. So in my view, if the community is saying no to this location and there is an alternative location available, I'm going to be supporting that community position.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, can I just ask a question of Director Bride? This has obviously been through council for, I think, a few years now. Could you maybe perhaps explain to the maybe newer councillors what the impact of not supporting this motion tonight would be?
Director Bride.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll only talk about the development aspect, so maybe Director Driscoll may wish to talk about the lease implications, but certainly the development application was for the site that's currently subject to the Excision and Lease. So that's the site that went to the community, was tested with the community, and then Council resolved in September to approve the development or the tower on that particular location. Certainly from a planning authority perspective, if a new proposal was lodged, we would then have to go through the exact same process, so advertising, and that would come to council. But essentially we've got a decision by the West Australian Planning Commission for that particular site, and that's what everyone's been working on to date. So they've got a valid planning approval. If an alternative site is considered, that would really be probably at the applicant's request to come forward.
Deputy Mayor, did you want to direct that question to Director Driscoll?
Yes, if I could just have a follow-up question through you, Mr Mayor, to Director Bride. And would the applicant be able to challenge Council's decision at SAT?
Director Bride.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, the decision was made by the West Australian Planning Commission, so the city only provided a recommendation back in September. Given the application was approved by the West Australian Planning Commission, obviously there's no appeal rights. In terms of the lease and whether there are appeal rights, I believe Director Driscoll may be able to answer that question.
CEO.
Yeah, look, just before we step into the lease provisions, Director Bride might like to clarify the contemplation of location at the time that this matter has been considered by council. So there was multiple locations that were contemplated before council determined that this was the most appropriate. So maybe if Mr Bride could run through those issues for the councillors that weren't actually around the table at that time.
Director Bride, can you just give a brief overview of those considerations?
Mr Mayor. Yes, certainly, as I said, obviously the application was lodged for that particular site, and that's when the planning assessment was done. But prior to lodging the application, there were a number of sites considered, and those sites obviously closer to Centenary Avenue were looked at and do provide further separation, but they are a long way away from the power source. The land involved is contaminated with asbestos, so there are implications, and obviously you'd have to cable the power from Wendari Road all the way through the park down to those locations. So there was a number of considerations, and those locations were known and considered by council as part of that September 2023 report.
Thank you. Councillor Bain, you wish to ask a question?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. Could Director Bride please confirm that at that stage in September last year that you did say that those other sites could be accommodated, and can also confirm that there is a power source that can be connected into on Centenary Ave, and where this proposed parcel of land is to be excised, whoever does the building is still going to have to deal with asbestos. Thank you.
Director Bride, can you comment on those queries by Councillor Bain?
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor Bain, can you just go through those individually for me?
Yeah, sure. So you did mention at the time in September that those other two locations next to Centenary Ave could be accommodated by the city?
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, yes, certainly from a planning perspective, the biggest consideration from the planning authority is the visual amenity. So subject to the application being made for those other sites, the whole process would start again, and it will be up to council to make those decisions. So yes, those other options were available at the time, but this location was ultimately chosen and approved by council.
And can you confirm, is there or is there not a power source that can be connected into on Centenary Ave?
Through Mr Mayor, I'd have to go back and look at the particular implications of the power source. I know that the obvious way to power that unit was to come from Wendari, but yeah, I can't remember since September 2023. It's a long time ago.
Well, I've been doing a lot of research on it, and yes, I do have a map showing that there is a power source on Centenary Ave, and the applicant will have to deal with Centenary at the proposed site, they'll have to deal with digging and contamination of asbestos, just the same as they would if they were to build at Centenary Ave, next to Centenary Ave.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Director Bright, just to clarify. So this motion, council is well within its rights to, if we decline, we are not breaking any law, just to clarify. So it is a decision for us to make. We can go for or against. Are we opening up any potential legal issues by declining this? Just wanted some
And just
clarification.
on that, just to add to the question from Councillor Singh, I'd ask, since the matter was approved already by the WA Planning Commission, what effect would any rejection tonight by council actually have on that approval?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's probably a question to Director Driscoll. The item that's with council tonight is not in relation to the development application. It's in relation to the lease following the development application. So I suggest maybe Director Driscoll can answer that one.
Thank you, Director Bright. Director Driscoll, you heard the questions. Can I ask for your comment?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, as Director Bride has stated, the purpose of this report is the final stage of this process, which has been a lengthy process, and it's around the lease. If the lease isn't endorsed tonight, it simply means that Indara will have no site access and will not be able to commence construction. The complication then becomes the fact that they've got a DA, with a requirement to commence construction substantially by November 25. I don't know enough about the Planning Act to determine what the legal implications of that is, but there will be some issues. The other point as well, that there's a financial value to this lease. Financial value is around $1 million, so that's also a consideration to be considered,
Well, then thank you, but just to follow up on that, not knowing all of those things and considering that a development application has already been granted to them, could this council, having already made a decision to support the original motion, now withdrawing that, could this council be legally liable for damages from the propellant? Is obviously, apart from all the time and effort and cost spent by the city's officers to progress this matter over the long period of time we've been dealing with this, would there be damages? Could there be damages in relation to this completely changing tack tonight? CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, there would be a range of potential issues that the city would need to contemplate. There may well be a claim for damages by Indara. There are also the potential that, remember, this is a state government reserve vested in the care, control and management of the city. There is the capacity for the state government to simply step in, excise the parcel of land and remove council from the decision-making process in its entirety. Given, and we need to make this very clear, council has contemplated location and has given its approval for the location that this lease currently sits on. So council has had its debate and has decided that this location was suitable. This is simply now giving effect to the ability to lease that site. So remember, there are other elements, amenity-based elements that were contemplated, including the provision of lighting over the basketball court that is there. All of those are elements that are fundamental or that were incorporated into this agreement. I appreciate that the revenue may not be an issue, the amenity provisions may not be an issue, but the location was contemplated by this council, was supported. This is simply a lease to give effect to that. The outcomes of not affecting or not providing that lease, we haven't yet contemplated because council has made its decision. But if council doesn't support the lease, it does open it up, I think, to a range of avenues that we would need to reasonably consider. Some of those things are outside of our control. They may well be enacted by Indara themselves. The Telecommunications Act is a very powerful act, so they do have rights regardless of the city's consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Yildiz.
Thank you, and through the Mayor, in relation to the development approval, Indara already has the rights to be able to, in essence, rely on the approval to be able to do what they've got to do. As the CEO has articulated, the decision for council right now is to not frustrate the approval that's already been granted, but instead follow through what council's already decided back in September 2023. So the location's already been identified, the development approval was granted on the basis of the location that was identified, and it's intrinsically linked, the approval to build the structure as well as the location. That was what was approved by WAPC. So what is before council tonight is in relation to providing the tenure in regards to the land, which is not the city's land, but under a management order, to excise that out and allow the ability for the lease to be granted in regards to being able to ensure that there's tenure to be able to construct the facility. If council was to, in essence, go against previous decision and frustrate the ability for Indara to be able to follow through with the approval that's already granted, the city would be exposing itself to a legal risk. The ability to be able to articulate exactly what that is and the avenues that Indara may or may not want to consider taking would be up to them, but there would be a legal risk that the city would be exposing themselves to.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the matter before I ask the Deputy Mayor to close? Deputy Mayor. Oh, Councillor Kunza?
I just wanted to ask a question. The commentary in the officer report, point 2, if the officer recommendation is not supported, is that Indara will continue to seek opportunities for telecommunications infrastructure in the locality. Is there a compulsion for them to continue looking for it, given that this is to address poor mobile telecommunications services in that area? Given they explored a number of options, is there a legal obligation for them to continue looking for infrastructure upgrades, or could they potentially not further look for infrastructure upgrades for that area?
Director Driscoll, are you able to comment on that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure whether it's a question of the legal obligation, but I know that they've certainly identified this as an area where they require additional coverage. So one would expect that they would continue to look for opportunities.
But from memory, most of the options were on our land or our controlled land. So if we're not supporting it, the potential that the reality is there's poor telecommunication provision in that area. But you believe that they would continue looking regardless?
Director?
Oh, I would expect so, yes.
Even after going through this lengthy process on council land?
CEO?
Well, only just to say, I don't know that we could understand what Indara, how they would deal with it, with the matter. What we know is that there's a gap in telecommunications in this area. How they dealt with it without going on council land is an issue for Indara.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll invite the Deputy Mayor to close debate. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I appreciate, the arguments for not supporting this. The horse has bolted. It's gone too far. We want to talk about council's consistency in its decision making. The decision was made to approve the development application. This is literally just that final step of that process. While I appreciate that once we relinquish control over this, federally, yes, further things can happen, but this was pretty much out of our control to begin with. The WAPC already approved this. We're just merely the administrators of this process, and I think, we need to remember that. Nobody wants a mobile phone tower in their park, in their suburb, unless you want better phone reception. We've got them in Riverton, literally walking, 2 or 3 steps from people's homes at the back of Riverton Reserve. Once it's there, you really don't even know that it's there, except that you get excellent mobile phone coverage. We had before I was even on council, we had an application for one in Rossmoyne. Now, if you've ever been to my house, you cannot get mobile phone reception in the downstairs part of my house. I've had to learn to live with that because our community refused to support a mobile phone tower up the road from my house, and so did this council. So people of Rossmoyne, whenever they ring me and complain about the mobile phone tower reception, it's like, we'll just remember that petition that went around. So I think at the end of the day, we've just got to, accept the fact that it is what it is, and I certainly don't want to be exposing the city to risk of litigation should we not just complete this last piece of the puzzle. So I hope, Council, that you do support it and we can all move on. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll put the item to the vote. Thank you, Council.
The motion for item OC 02224 has been carried with 9 in favour and 2 councillors voting against the motion, Councillor Page and Councillor Bain.
Thank you. We move to CC 023 of 24. That's the financial report for August 2024. The recommendation appears on page 46 of tonight's agenda. It is also on screen. May I have a mover, please, for that item? Deputy Mayor, thank you, and a seconder. Councillor Bain, thank you, Councillor Bain. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I support the officer's recommendation, and as I mentioned at the AB, would also like to acknowledge the level of detail that's in this report, and thank you, Director Driscoll and her team for providing that. So I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I support the officer's recommendation too. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Let's put the item to the vote. Oh, Councillor Hearn. Councillor, I'll just have to ask you to take your phone and put it away. I just can't entertain us having phones out on the desk.
Sorry, these are my official notes, just like you'd have on an iPad.
I think you then need to get an iPad. You have been issued with one, haven't you? I just don't know if it's appropriate. I've made a ruling earlier tonight. I actually specifically asked for councillors to put their phones away. We can take this decision offline, but I'm not having phones here and people conversing and whatever.
Sorry, I'm not conversing. These are my notes that I have written for this item, and I'm not sure how they're different to people who have written in pen. So can I just make my statement? Thank you.
Well, first of all, I won't have you arguing with me. If I make a ruling here, that'll be the ruling. And there's no point shaking your head and rolling your eyes. I'm telling you that's how it works here. But I'm asking you, and I did make it patently clear at the beginning of the meeting, that please turn off your phones, and councillors particularly put them away. So I feel it's a little bit inappropriate for you and disrespectful for you to be asking a question and scrolling through your phone. Let's take it offline for the moment. Please ask your question.
So I've spent quite a bit of time over the last year reviewing the various financial reports of various local governments, and I understand that there is a great degree of discretion local governments can follow in the format of their monthly financial reports. This revised format is approaching one of the best formats I have encountered. I can stand here and stomp my feet and whinge, and City Accounting directors have a reasonable amount of discretion to ignore my requests. I specifically note the inclusion of year-to-date expenditure on carried forward CapEx, and I feel confident the report accurately reports our actual financial year expenditure. So to Director Driscoll and CEO Littleton, I very much appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hearn. Does anyone else wish to speak before I put the item to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Let's put the item to the vote.
The motion for item CC 02324 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. The next item is from the Director of Mr Warren Bowe, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. It's item 13.4, IE 015 of 24. Hang on a sec, I've got to back up the truck. Director Bowe. A lot of murmuring going on up here. It's item 13.3, Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Planning and Development. It's item PD 008 of 24. The item's report title is Adoption of Scheme Amendment number 15 to Local Planning Scheme number 42, various lots in Canning Vale. amending the reserve classification from public open space to environmental conservation. The recommendation appears on page 85 of the agenda and is on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Kunza, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Rodriguez, thank you, Councillor Rodriguez. Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I very much support the officer's recommendation. I wish it could go further, but I'm happy to be pragmatic to get a more obtainable positive outcome. I look forward to seeing a further report in the near future outlining the number of significant trees along the entire site. I'd like to thank staff for progressing this scheme amendment and the people that have contributed, responded to it. I note the City of Coburn's contribution through their submission, in which they argue that we should maintain an area as public open space around the Leeming Road, Clifton Road intersection to allow potential future construction of the Jandakot Eastern Link Road to support the Jandakot-Treeby urban expansion area, which is currently under investigation. And I find it quite remarkable that that's under investigation. The expansion area in question is currently zoned rural water protection in the Metropolitan Regional Scheme due to the fact that it sits on the important Jandakot Mound. They're looking at potentially clearing all the Banksia woodland there to allow more urban development. Now, based on Coburn's comments, the current road network can't support the potential urban development, which is why the Jandakot Eastern Link Road would be required and extended even further, it seems. Now, after I presented to the WA Planning Commission last year, which I've mentioned here previously, where I had 2 minutes without knowledge of the agenda to present, it was stated that the City of Canning needs to evaluate how the removal of the Jandakot Eastern Link Road from the Metropolitan Region Scheme would impact the surrounding road network, that further regional transport studies were required, including alternative routes. Now, it's therefore pretty comical and quite galling that they're investigating rezoning an entire area in the MRS, which has historically been largely remnant vegetation, to produce more urban development. And in order to do that development, they need to build more roads, specifically the Jandakot Eastern Link Road, a dual carriageway that doesn't currently exist, that traverses right through Bush Forever sites 388 and 389, because the current road network doesn't support this new urbanisation. Now, maybe they should try not rezoning the land in the MRS, and then this new road network wouldn't have any issues. The City of Coburn, in fact, celebrated the cancellation of the Row 8 project, as passionately advocated for the former road reserve to be an ecological corridor. Perhaps they could support us in doing the same here through their submissions. Now, I'm proud that the City of Canning is looking to protect this environmentally significant land by rezoning it environmental conservation. Whilst I won't be here forever to stand up for this bushland, at least we can make a difference in the time that is given to us. Now, I thank those who have done likewise, including council, staff and our community.
Thank you, Councillor Kunza. Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation, and I feel that this is like a great improvement for the residents of the city of Canning, and especially Canning Vale. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else wish to speak? Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too support the officer's recommendation, and thank you to Director Brad and his team for putting this together. It's been a lot of years to get here. I also had a bit of a chuckle when I saw the City of Coburn's response because it kind of always confirmed what I suspected, in that they certainly were more conscious of the road rather than the environment. Although I would like to see a much larger portion of the area being rezoned. We've got to be realistic, I guess, and do whatever we can and what we feel that WAPC will support. So again, I would like to thank everybody involved, council, previous council, Councillor Kunza for really leading the charge on this, and of course Stephen Johnson and Sian Mawson, who are in the public gallery, to make sure that we all support this. So they had the absolute pleasure of actually walking through this site, and they were absolutely stunned, if I can speak on their behalf, with the level of amazing bushland in there, and how untouched it is by humans. So it would be great to keep that for as long as possible. As Councillor Kunza said, he won't be around. I certainly won't be around to continue to fight for this, but we can certainly leave here knowing that we did our absolute best to conserve as much of this precious bushland as we possibly could. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Does anyone wish to speak against the item? In the absence of any discussion against the item, Councillor Kunzer, I won't ask you to close debate. We shall put the item to the vote. Thank you.
The motion for item PD 00824 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. We now do go back in time to 13.4, Mr Warren Bowe, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, IE 015 of 24. It's the execution of payment direction deed for waste services agreement in brackets energy recovery. The officer's recommendation is on page 99 of tonight's agenda and is also on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for this item? Councillor Kunzer, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Bain, thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Kunzer.
Yes, I support the officer's recommendation. It appears to simplify what seemed to be a bit of a convoluted process as was envisaged 10 years ago. So I support what the officers have proposed.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I also support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Anyone wish to speak against the item? For? Thank you. We'll put the item to the vote.
The motion for item IE 01524 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move to IE 018 of 24. The title of the report, Elderberry Drive, Parkwood, Road Thoroughfare Closure at Zelkova Way. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 104. Can I have a mover, please, for this item? Councillor Secon, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Singh, thank you. Councillor Secon.
I agree with the officer's recommendation. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the matter? Councillor Deputy Mayor.
I don't wish to speak against the officer's recommendation, but I just would like to note that I would have preferred to have had a heads up about this, although I'm confident that if the community were not satisfied with the recommendation that they would have spoken up. I note there wasn't much of a response, and I hope that the community are okay with this, but I'm sure staff will be willing to deal with any queries or concerns that come from this. So I support the officer's recommendation in the hope that so do the community.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We'll put the item to the vote.
The motion for item IE 01524 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. Item 13.5 is from the Directorate of Mr Luke Ellis, the Acting Director of Customer and Community. There are no reports from here, Luke, but I wanted to thank you for your service to the City of Canning and also to the community. And for those that don't know, Luke is leaving us and heading off to the hills to work for, I believe, is it a secret or not? No? No? Okay. For Kalamunda. And we wish you good luck and thank you so much for your input. You've been, a wonderful guide to this council over your time, not only as an acting director, but in your previous role. So personally, thank you, and thank you for sitting up here with us and working so closely with many of the councillors here. So thank you, and good luck up in Kalamunda. Shire of Kalamunda, yeah. I was going to say the hamlet. Thank you. We'll move on to item 14, which are motions of which previous notice has been given. There is a notice of motion which has been submitted by Deputy Mayor Spencer Teo and also Councillor Rodriguez. It's notice of motion 008 of 24. The report of that the title of the motion is Review of Pedestrian Safety in School Zone at Lynwood Senior High School. The motion is on page 111 of the agenda. It's on screen now. Deputy Mayor Spencer Teo is moving the item. And Councillor Rodriguez, I understand you'll be seconding, is that right? Councillor Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to the matter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was one of those fantastic occasions where you were unavailable, and I was asked by the principal, Emma Walker, to go and judge the children's damper making competition. But be careful what you wish for, because some of it was undercooked and didn't taste very nice, but others were amazing. And it was just in conversation with Emma that she raised concerns about pedestrian and student safety at school closure time. Obviously, having been to the opening of the new art centre at the high school, which created a new entry, and also being at the 50th anniversary, you didn't quite see how pedestrian movement took place, because you actually couldn't get in through a side gate. But it just so happened that this was around school closure time, and Emma walked me out onto Metcalfe Road, and I was absolutely blown away with how the students literally come through 2 double gates and then literally disperse in all different directions. The median strip in the middle of Metcalfe Road is slightly off centre. So Emma will stand in the refuge of that and try her best to guide the students, but when they're already halfway down High Road, or there's cars coming out of the car park or from the local streets, it is an absolute dog's breakfast when you're literally trying to herd 1,000 students into one direction. So had I not have seen it for myself, I probably wouldn't have realised the impact of it, and also seeing the principal rush out with her high vis on as soon as the bell went to make sure that the students got out safely. You've also got a lot of P-platers, who obviously are not used to navigating through busy streets like that. Subsequently, Emma's forwarded me several complaints by local residents of parents parking across driveways in the small local streets. Now that all the traffic has been diverted to Metcalfe, a lot of the local residents are being impacted by that. So I think this review really isn't asking for too much. It's very similar to what we did around the Willerton Senior High School. And obviously we have made this a priority to review all of our schools in the City of Canning, but considering the impact of this particular one, I would just wanted to prioritise this for our staff to also offer some assistance to the school and the principal. So I hope, councillors, that you support this. Obviously, any recommendations will be coming back to council with a report and budgeting. We have already done a review of High Road, so a lot of the stuff, a lot of the information is already there. The student crossing on High Road is now redundant because there are literally no students crossing there. They do tend to cross at the traffic lights. However, I'm not sure that the traffic lights have been adjusted to allow extra time for literally hundreds of students who live in Lynwood and Ferndale to cross there. So I just wanted to make sure that that was taken into consideration, and also that the 40 kilometre per hour speed drop from 70 on High Road is extended, just to make sure that it just reaches that other side of Metcalfe Road towards the Whaleback Golf Course. So again, pretty standard stuff here, but incredibly important given the lack of, I don't know whether it was a lack of consultation when the school was redeveloped, but it's a shame that we will be playing catch up. However, it is what it is, and the sooner that we can do that, I'm sure it will be appreciated by the school, the students and the local residents. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to ask all councillors to join us in supporting this motion. I want to stress the urgent need for improvements to ensure the safety of students and the wider community around Lynwood Senior High School. The current pedestrian and traffic infrastructure, particularly on Metcalfe Road, is not equipped to handle the large number of students who exit the school by foot during peak times. Principal Emma Walker's concerns are evident, as she has taken on the responsibility of guiding students across the busy road herself, a role that should not fall on her shoulders. This demonstrates the real urgency for the city to intervene with measures that will not only ensure pedestrian safety, but also alleviate the burden on the school staff and prevent potential accidents. Additionally, the congestion caused by school pickup times is creating tension between parents and residents, with many instances of vehicles blocking the driveways. A review of parking restrictions, as well as updates to pedestrian crossing and traffic signals, will help improve the flow of traffic and safety for everyone. I'm confident that this review will prioritize pedestrian safety and result in much-needed upgrades to the area, ensuring that the infrastructure supports the community needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rodriguez. Yes, Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second motion regarding review of safety, pedestrian safety regarding a school. There was another one which was done. Willerton. And I remember asking and requesting the CEO and the team that such a review should be done for every school within City of Canning. I mean, student safety is paramount. We should be doing it for everyone. And at that time, the response was the city will be doing something. So I'm a little bit, let's say, not happy that a councillor had to put this up, because city should have already done it for the schools. I understand there are some resource constraints and stuff. So for now, I would like to request CEO that please do this for all schools within City of Canning in the priority
I believe that is occurring. CEO. Thank you, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Singh. The council has actually set this as a KPI for me. I appreciate doesn't mean that a councillor through a notice of motion can't identify a particular issue. What I would say is that these things don't happen just like that. There is actually a little bit of science to a review, and you would be aware that we've got quite a number of schools right throughout the City of Canning. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and say we'll get everything done in 1 year or you know, in that sort of time frame. A KPI has been set. I have been working with the team to determine how we step forward into that review process. Obviously, this notice of motion is simply trying to highlight Lynwood as something that we should look at sooner rather than later. That's what we'll do, obviously, but we will, in response to the KPI that Council have set me, come up with a more tangible review process with some science and behind it. So you can expect to see that in my response, you know, both mid-year and at the end of the year.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Singh. Does anyone wish to speak on the item before we put it to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Let's put the item to the vote.
The motion N0M00824 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. At item 15, urgent business, there is none tonight. Item 16, confidential matters. There are none for council to consider. At item 17, closure, there being no further business. I'd like to thank everybody who attended tonight for attending, and also governance for their work this evening to keep us running on time and smoothly. I now declare the meeting closed, the time being 7:54 p.m. I'd like to thank you again for your attendance. Thank you, councillors.